going, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of Perfect Reload Weekly, where we take a look back at the week in video game news. My name is Steve, and I'm joined, as always, by Christian Slater, and this was a very skin of your teeth deadline to be able to film this week. Spent a lot of time in a computer repair shop this week. Christian, you excited to be able to film?
You know, I don't really appreciate you trying to sell me to that computer store. I also don't really appreciate the fact that they said that they didn't want me.
Sorry about that, buddy. So yeah, a lot going on this week, kind of like tangentially related to the show. But yeah, it was very... Friday was looking real sketchy whether or not I was going to actually be able to do this. So to give you some kind of behind the scenes, I've alluded to it over the past, I don't know, several weeks or so. But I have been redoing my house. And what I mean by that is I had my office on one end of the house, and that room was an extension on the house that was built like well before I bought the house, and it's not connected to the furnace or air conditioning. I had put air conditioning in a few years ago. So in the winter, it's super cold back there, and I work from home all day. And obviously when we all got sent home to work from home, nobody knew exactly how long you were going to be, although I will say fairly quickly my company was like, hey, your guys' team is going to be permanently from home. And we were told that like way sooner before everybody else was told, hey, we're permanently work from home. And since then, like nobody's really gone back where I work. Everybody's working from home. So made do with what you have. And, you know, at the time when the pandemic started, you know, it was springtime, so it wasn't that bad. You know, sure, it got a little warm in the summer, but as the winter months came on, man, it is brutal back there. We get a lot of snow here where I live, so it can be pretty cold. There have definitely been some times where that room has been in the single digits, and it's not super pleasant to sit like that all day working. So I've slowly but surely been trying to move my office out of that room. It has finally happened this week. This is the first show I am filming in the new office. This actually used to be my bedroom, and then I moved the bedroom to a different room in the house. So yeah, a lot of moving parts. Had a lot of people working on the house over the past week. Had a friend come over and help me move some things around. So my eternal thanks to him for doing that. But yeah, so it's definitely bare bones in here. I apologize if the audio is weird. This is still very much a largely empty room. All that's in it right now is my desk, a chair, you know, the equipment to film, and then I have another chair for that's kind of unrelated. So it will be a little echoey until it kind of starts to fill back up with objects. This is also the first week with the new camera. So if you see me looking down, it's because the camera is mounted above my head, and I tend to, instead of, I'm not used to looking at the camera, I'm used to looking at OBS to see myself, but the camera has a little screen that I can see myself on, which is immensely useful for getting things you know, framed right and not have to constantly move around. But I think it looks fairly nice. Still working on the lighting. We got to figure out how that's gonna play out. But you know, got the show on the road. But because of all that was going on, or I guess maybe I'm getting a bit of my head of myself, is so last week when I filmed last week's episode on Sunday, after that was done, I had treated myself to a little bit of a PC upgrade. I wanted a new case and a new CPU. Things were getting a little dragged down when I was editing and rendering and exporting and all that stuff. So a little CPU bump. So I went to install the CPU and computer stopped working. And so I spent the rest of the day Sunday troubleshooting, and I was kind of in a panic, not only because I was worried that my computer, which I use for a lot of stuff, was not working, but, you know, like I said, I work from home. I use that computer. I need that. So I kind of exhausted everything I could think of on Sunday. You know, I know how to put together a computer, but when it comes to troubleshooting, I'm not the most adept at that. So eventually got to the point where I was like, you know what, I think I need to bring this to someone that knows what they are doing. So I reached out to a local computer shop and asked them, I was like, do you deal with custom PCs? They're like, yeah, absolutely. So I sent it off to them. They found out that the CPU that I got was a bum CPU, wasn't working. So thankfully, Best Buy actually had one in stock. So I went and just bought a new one while I await my refund and return for the one that didn't work. And they got it up and running, but I had to keep running back and forth to hand them off parts, and they were giving me updates, trying to figure out if it was the motherboard, if it was the CPU, whatever it was. And finally on Friday morning, they had called and said, hey, we think you'll be able to pick it up today. And I was like, that would be great. So just about a couple hours before they closed on Friday, I was able to get it, got it back home. They assembled it for me, which was awesome. They didn't just test to make sure that it wasn't, they made sure that everything was working, but also on the side, they just put everything back together for me and like professionally managed it. And everything is great. So I didn't have to worry about rebuilding the computer in a new case, which, I don't mind, but it's not the most fun activity in the world. So I was very excited to have it. The new case looks great. I went with, if you're a PC nerd, I went with the Fractal North, which seems to be the kind of the hot case, which is funny because the last case I had, which was the 011 from Leon Lee at the time, that was the hot case. So yeah, now just trend hopping, just jumping from trend to trend. And got a little PC or got a little CPU upgrade. Was on a Ryzen 5600X, went to the 5900X. I didn't want to go with new components because that was going to mean I was going to have to get a whole new motherboard, and I just wasn't prepared to do that. So the reason why I bring all that up is because with everything that I had going on, not having a computer, all this work done on my house, I really did not get a chance to play any video games. And I mentioned that was going to be a possibility last week. I did play a little bit more Star Wars Jedi Survivor this morning. It's the first time I had played it in essentially a week. I think maybe last Monday I played a little bit of it. So I haven't really made too much progress, and I don't want to keep blathering on about the game until I beat it. When I finish the game, which hopefully in another week and a half, I'll have it wrapped up. I want to, at the absolute very least, I want it wrapped up by the time Street Fighter 6 comes out in a few weeks. So I'll give some more like final thoughts and whatnot on that end. And then I had every intention of playing Tape to Tape, which went into early access. We talked about it some weeks back during one of the Steam demo events. I played a little bit of it. And now it's actually like kind of launched in early access. A lot of people have been talking about it. I enjoyed what I played in the demo. So I picked it up, I installed it, and then just didn't have time to play. So next week, at the very least, I'll be able to talk about Tape to Tape. But yeah, this week, I just don't have much to get into for games. Like I said, I played a little bit more Jedi Survivor. Furthering that story, getting closer to the end. I think probably another 5, 6, 7 hours, around there, probably until the end. I guess that game is a little bit longer than I thought. I thought it was going to maybe be like a 15-hour game, and then looking online, it's maybe like over 20, which is fine because I'm loving it. I'm enjoying everything that I'm getting out of it. So what are we going to do today before we get into the news? Since I didn't have much to talk about that I played, I figured, why don't we talk about what's yet to come this year? Now, initially, I had a plan that at the last show of every month, I'd kind of do a preview of the next month, and I think I only did it once or twice, and then I kind of forgot about it. So why don't we, as we inch closer to what would have been the E3 season, now I guess we could say it's the Keighley season, the Keighley Gala. Everybody's going to they're getting dressed up and going to the Keighley Gala in June. Why don't we take a look at what's coming out? So we're going to start off with stuff that actually has release dates. Now, of course, things could get delayed. Things could get canceled. You never know. So we're going to start off with things that have essentially an announced release date, and then we'll talk a little bit about things that sound like they are going to come out this year. Maybe we've been told that they're going to come out this year, but we don't have an actual date. So I am filming this on May 14th, and obviously one of the biggest games of the year just came out, Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. I'm not a Zelda fan. I don't have a Switch, so I did not play it. I've talked to people that have played it. They are super enjoying it. I've watched some footage online, and people really seem to be into it. I'm seeing a ton of clips of people building stuff on Twitter. So if you're into Zelda, I'm sure you are already knee deep in that game, and enjoying probably every moment of it. So let's pick up kind of mid-May, and it looks like the next kind of larger release is Lego 2K Drive. We talked about this when it got announced. It got announced like fairly recently, like within the past 6 weeks, I think it was. So it is, to me, on the surface, it looks like Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts, but it also looks like it might have some open worldness to it. There, for a game that's coming out on this Friday, there hasn't been a ton of footage. That initial trailer, and maybe there has been more, and I haven't kept up with it, so I haven't seen it. But it does look pretty cool. I don't know if I'm going to pick it up. We'll see what the reviews are on Friday. If it sounds like it's got some substance, got some meat on the bone, maybe next weekend I'll go out and grab it and we can talk about it. But we'll kind of see where it goes from there. After that, May 23rd, Warhammer 40K Bolt Gun. So this one is pretty interesting because I believe this is the Warhammer first-person shooter that has the retro-style graphics. It's kind of designed to look almost like PS1 era, but it's definitely maybe a little bit nicer than that. It's got a really unique look to it, at least in terms of stuff's coming out. We've seen a lot of retro games over the years that obviously use like 2D pixel based art style, but we haven't seen too much that kind of go for that early 3D polygonal look. There has been some cool stuff, like we've seen like that Dead Space demake. I think there was that Dark Souls or Demon Souls demake that came out. So the style is definitely maybe gaining some traction, and maybe this will propel it forward. But I actually thought this looked pretty cool. Like it's definitely nice to see somebody taking a chance with a big license like that. Like I get that, Warhammer 40K is not necessarily top of the sales chart, but those games do sell, and Warhammer is immensely popular. It's made by ROG Digital. And I'm looking through what they have made previously, and I honestly don't think I've ever heard of any of these games. So maybe this will be like a pretty good breakout game for them. So after that, I debated whether or not I wanted to bring up Lord of the Rings Gollum, because I'm not a Lord of the Rings fan. I never have been. I probably never will be. It's not a game that I paid attention to. I have seen a lot of jokes about it online, saying that maybe it doesn't look the greatest, or I don't know, maybe just expectations are very low for it. It's a stealth-based game. It's being made by Daedalic. So Daedalic has done... Trying to look through their list of things that... nothing like huge. Let's see. Yeah, nothing really big. They did State of Mind. They did Ken Follett's The Pillars of Earth, so like point and click adventure games. So this is definitely maybe a little bit something different for them. So yeah, it's not for me, but it's a big license, so I figure we bring it up. All right, let's switch over to June. Because June is when we really pick up. Kind of the first big thing of June is Street Fighter 6, coming out on June 2nd. I've talked plenty about this game. I'm very excited for it to come out. I'll be picking it up day one and playing it, so I'm sure I'll have a lot of thoughts on that week's show. I have not seriously gotten into a fighting game in some time. The last big two that I really got into, and I might be getting my years wrong, so maybe there was something. I guess we'll say, for the sake of covering my bases, the last three. So I did not really particularly care for Street Fighter 5. I did play quite a bit of Street Fighter 4. The first BlazBlue game I was really, really deep into, really, really loved it, and Marvel vs. Capcom 3. So I'm not sure, I can't really remember off the top of my head which of those came out first. I feel like BlazBlue was probably the first in that line. But those three were the last ones that I really got into, and those were obviously some time ago. But Street Fighter 6, the little bit that I got to play in that beta that we touched upon a few weeks ago, obviously I wish I would have done another one of the betas, and there is another one coming up. I think it's this coming week, and maybe I'll hop into that. Because the one I did before was like that World Tour mode, which is kind of like a truncated version of the gameplay. I didn't get a chance to actually play with any of the main characters. You're doing a creative character, and I'm assuming you kind of pick up moves as you go along. So very limited move set, and very short fights, one around kind of things. So I am really looking forward to Street Fighter 6. I would say it is probably one of my most anticipated games this year, and I hope it clicks with me, because like I said, it's been a while since I've gotten really deep into a fighting game. And I grew up playing fighting games. I just released a video not too long ago talking about kind of the heyday of Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter, and I didn't do that just because I thought it was an interesting topic to talk about. I did it because that was a big part of my childhood. Those two games really were a big deal when I was growing up. And then just a few days later, 4 days later, on the 6th of June, is Diablo 4. As I was super high on the game when the beta came out. I loved the beta. I thought the game looks great, plays great, feels great, all that stuff. But the more I've heard about the live service stuff, the more that they have opened up about that, the more I am wondering, do I actually need to play this game at launch, or should I wait until they start releasing all this extra content? Because if they're going to do more content every month, aside from just getting in and rushing through the story, like, should you wait to see what they do and play a more fulfilling or completed version of the game? So I don't know. We'll kind of see. I'll see how I'm feeling that week. Really, and maybe I pick it up, maybe I don't. I don't know. It seems weird to not pick it up. I was so hyped up about it, so excited about it. I spoke so highly of it when I covered the beta. And so it's just this weird turn, and I think it's just because I don't know, maybe I'm just scared of the live service aspect. And I know that you can essentially not interact with that stuff, but I don't know, you also don't want to play a game and feel like you're being left in the dust, or left outside of the conversation about it, because you're choosing not to interact with a major part of the game. It is a part of the game you don't necessarily have to interact with to fully enjoy it, but it is a pretty compelling part of their overall package. So we'll see how that goes. And then just not long later, on June 20th, Aliens Dark Descent. This was released somewhat recently, and it looked a little bit like the previous Aliens game, the one that was like kind of the isometric shooting game, but it actually is not. It's more like XCOM, which is actually kind of cool. I'm a pretty big XCOM fan. I'm a pretty big like military tactics kind of thing. I like stuff, like the XCOM game. When they did Gears Tactics a while ago, I got really into that. I was trying to find the name of that Aliens game. Fireteam Elite. That was it. Fireteam Elite came out in 2021. But Dark Descent, they initially announced it. They showed just like a brief snippet of gameplay in the initial trailer, and it really did look just like an isometric shooter when it was announced last year. It was one of the Summer Games Fest games last year. But then when they put out another trailer just not too long ago, maybe last month, maybe the month before, and you actually saw the tactic side of it, it was like, okay, this is actually really different than what I thought it was going to be. So I'm pretty interested in it. But then 2 days later, another big release, Final Fantasy 16. Another one where we'll wait and see, because that's a huge game to get into. If you're really, if you're picking up kind of all the big games in June, Street Fighter 6 is a huge time sink because it's kind of endless, right? You can just keep playing online against other people, after you've completed whatever, portion of the single player-ish stuff you want to do, run through the arcade modes, see player character endings, do that world tour mode, all that stuff. There's that gauntlet thing as well. Can't remember the exact name of it. But you can keep playing that, right? Same with Diablo. Diablo is going to be persistent. There's going to be the story that you can finish. So you're going to still be playing these games, and then Final Fantasy 16 comes out on the 22nd. Now, obviously, there's not a ton of crossover, with people with that, but there's a lot of crossover. Those are really, three really big franchises. So of course, there's gonna be people that are interested in all three of them. But Final Fantasy 16 definitely looks like, I think what did they say? There was an interview not too long ago where they said, like 30 hours, 40 hours, something like that. Maybe it was even more than that. But that's going to be a big one to get into. And I really like the look of it. It looks like the gameplay is going to be pretty cool. I played a decent amount of that Final Fantasy VII Remake finally earlier this year. I eventually bounced off of it. It just became too much of a slog to get through. And I think it is because they are artificially inflating that game, because it's not the entire game. They just remade a portion of it, and there'll be more portions to, yet to come. So maybe with like a completed final game that has a beginning, middle, and end with Final Fantasy 16, maybe that would be something that would hook me back in. Because I have not finished a Final Fantasy game in... when the hell did Final Fantasy 3 come out? The 90s. So it's been 20 something years since I've finished a Final Fantasy game. So it'd be kind of cool to dig into it, to check it out. And then now, once we get past June, we're not seeing as much stuff on the books right now. The next kind of bigger thing is Exo Primal in July, and that's not looking great. They had those like beta tests, or maybe they were alpha tests. I can't remember what they were calling them. And people got their hands on the game, and it was definitely not super well received. Obviously this was the game when the initial trailer came out, everybody was like, oh, is this like a new Dino Crisis? Like, that's kind of, the feeling that everybody got, but no, it's something else. So we'll see how that goes. And then the following week on July 20th, Immortals of Avium. This is actually a brand new IP from EA. It's a first-person shooter game, and it is single player. It's not a live service game. It's not a multiplayer game. So definitely something very different out of EA. This is out of their EA Originals thing, where they have, outside of their main franchises. So, it's not Battlefield. It's not The Sims. It's not, one of the sports games. So it is a first-person shooter, but it's fantasy. It's like fantasy, magic, all that kind of stuff. I thought the trailer that they put out looked pretty cool. It said it was a gameplay trailer, but I don't remember seeing a HUD. So obviously it could have just been HUD-less gameplay footage. But I really want to see what this game actually looks like up and running, like here's the version you're going to play when it comes out. So it's I believe it's the first game by Ascendant Studios, which is made up of people that worked on Dead Space and Call of Duty. And anytime I see like ex-Call of Duty people involved with like a first-person shooter, I get fairly excited, simply because, you can say what you want to say about Call of Duty, and I have a lot of complaints about Call of Duty as somebody that actively plays the game, though not as much now post-launch 6-7 months. But the one thing you can't deny is that the game is like super smooth. It always plays really well. The shooting feels good. You might not like map selection or stuff like that, but in terms of like, depressing your finger on the controller to pull the imaginary trigger, like it feels satisfying. So I hope it plays well, and I get the feeling it probably will. And then the following day after that is Pikmin 4, kind of the next big Switch release now that Zelda is out of the gate. The Pikmin games, I played the first one, not when it came out. I played it as an adult. They're cool. Like I always thought they were a neat little thing. I never played Pikmin 3, which I believe was a Wii U game. And I really enjoyed the Wii U. I played quite a bit on the Wii U, but I don't know, whatever reason, I guess Pikmin 3, maybe I rented it at one point and played a little bit of it, because I have something in the back of my mind that says that I have played that game before, but I don't know if I actually have. I hope it does well for them, because Pikmin is obviously a series that they keep coming back to. It's not like a major franchise for Nintendo, but they always are like super into it. It's always promoted, it's always pushed. You can tell that they're putting effort into it. So I hope it pleases the fan base for that. And then now we're already into August, and boy, I guess right now, the two big hitters in August are going to be Armored Core 6, which we just talked about. I think that was last week or the week before, where they put out the trailer and announced the date. And then the other one's Baldur's Gate 3. I haven't watched a lot of footage on Baldur's Gate 3. It's obviously a really big deal. It's a legendary franchise. I played Baldur's Gate 2 back in the day. I don't know if I'll get into Baldur's Gate 3. We'll see how things are in August, because, we might, once June hits and we get new game announcements, August might fill up more to avoid September, because September has a really big 1-2 punch. And, a lot of times people like to counter program. They don't necessarily want to release, their big game, their developers or their publishers' big game for that quarter or even for the entire year, right up against a huge release. So maybe August gets a little bit more populated. And usually, of course, August is like when Madden comes out, you know, you start getting your sports games and all that stuff. But I think Armored Core, I think there's going to be a subset of fans that are expecting it to be like the other From Software games. And by other From Software games, I'm going to say in this scenario, they forgot that they have made other games besides the Souls series and Elden Ring. This is definitely not going to be that. But what I want to see is, do they apply that Elden Ring formula to it? Because Elden Ring in many ways is kind of a simplified version and a better entry point into that genre than the Demon Souls or Dark Souls games, or you know, those series. People said that they had a much easier time getting into Elden Ring. And Armored Core, I wouldn't say it's like the most dense series in the world, but there's a lot of grinding in those games, and maybe some repetition that at the time was a little bit more acceptable or expected in video game development and design, and doesn't necessarily fly these days. So I am curious to see what they do, to see if they maybe tone that down a little bit. And then September, before we get into the big September thing, yeah, I'm looking at the rest of the list. Okay, so there are 2 big September releases, one of which has a release date, one of which doesn't. So we'll start with the one with the release date, and that is Starfield, which is probably my second most anticipated game of the year. I am very, very, very much looking forward to it. I really hope it does not release in a just like broken mess.
You know, I think I understand why Starfield appeals so much to you. Exploring a vast world, the possibility of running into infinite nothingness, interacting with new races, new people, new horizons, new discoveries, the openness of what could possibly be out there in the cosmos. But I'll tell you right now, no matter where you go in outer space, I'll be there. Your past will hunt you down. It will never leave. Those mistakes that keep you up at night, no Starfield can save you from those.
Dude, what the fuck is wrong with you, man? God, I should have sold you to that store. Starfield is, you know, it's the next game from Bethesda. I believe this is their first release since Fallout 76. I have a complicated history with Bethesda. I enjoyed Skyrim. I am not a Fallout fan, and not really too big into any of the other stuff that they did. I have played a few of the Fallouts that they have done. I have played 3 and 4. I think I played more of 4 than 3. Maybe it was the other way around. I can't remember. But I was never a big fan of those games. But my taste in games has changed over the past couple of years. I am much more open to playing one of these first-person RPG, open-world, big sprawling games that they are very well known for. Now, obviously, I did play Skyrim, which is very similar, but I don't know. That was such a huge moment in time for games. Like, everybody was playing that, right? I feel like more people were really rallying around Skyrim than they were like Fallout 4. I would say Fallout 3 probably rivaled Skyrim, but really what kicked it off for me was actually people that had worked on games of that ilk was the Outer Worlds, which I get, you know, didn't set the world on fire. A lot of people didn't really like that game and they found it to be disappointing, but I really enjoyed it. It was a very streamlined experience. It did have some technical issues, but I didn't really run into anything that really bothered me too much. I really enjoyed that game, and that really kind of opened me up to being willing to try other games of that style, and then that bled into Cyberpunk a couple years ago, and obviously Cyberpunk has a lot of issues, but it is that same kind of style of game, and I played through it just fine. I enjoyed my time with Cyberpunk, and so that's kind of got me to the point where it's like, you know, I'm kind of ready to go all in on Starfield, and I really hope it ships in a workable state. You know, I've said this many times, we're in a post-cyberpunk world where people are not as forgiving anymore when games ship just totally fucking broken, even coming from a developer with as much clout as Bethesda. I don't think people have the patience for it anymore. See, just take a look at what's happening with the Jedi Survivor stuff on PC. The game still has some issues. They patched it a few times, but man, at launch, there were people that just like straight up couldn't play that game. And the discourse around it was, even though the content of the game is fantastic, because of all the technical issues, it was really kind of just dragged down and dragged through the mud. But Starfield really, and we're going to touch upon it more in the news because there's some interesting Starfield news that came out this week. But it really is something I am tremendously looking forward to. It is to the point where I have rarely ever done this in my life. Only a handful of times where this is like the kind of game where it's like, I'll take the day off when it comes out and play it. Although I think it actually comes out like during the middle of the week. A coworker and I were talking about this. Yeah, it comes out on a Wednesday. We were both like, oh man, maybe we take the day off. And we were like, oh, it's a Wednesday. And I was like, I can wait. You could take the Wednesday off. I'll work the one. If it was Friday, maybe it'd be a different story. But if it's coming out on a Wednesday, I'll play it after I get out of work for the night. But there was other stuff coming out in September, but that's really the big thing. And then there's really nothing for October and November as of right now. That will obviously change very much in the next few weeks. The only real big thing announced with a solid date is Endless Dungeon, October 19th. It just got delayed. Endless Dungeon actually looks pretty cool. It's a tower defense twin stick game. It's the successor to Dungeon of the Endless, which came out like almost 10 years ago at this point. The trailer, they've been putting some trailers out recently, and like I said, it just very much recently got delayed to October. So there is some pretty good amount of footage out there so you can get an idea of the game, and it does look cool. I like tower defense games. I don't play a ton of them, but I do like them. Anybody remember that South Park tower defense game that came out? Man, I was really into that. I really liked the way that played. So now that that's out of the way, so the stuff that I'm not going to go everything that is billed to have a 2023 release date without having a solid actual day and month, but we'll go through some of them in alphabetical order. I will briefly touch upon these. I'm not going to go super in depth, but Alan Wake 2, Remedy's coming hot off the heels of Control, which was super well received. The fan perception of Alan Wake has only increased in positivity over the past while. They did that like remake, remaster, whatever it was, not too long ago. Assassin's Creed Mirage, which is apparently like kicking the story back to like the original Assassin's Creed style of doing things, which would be really nice because I greatly enjoyed the first Assassin's Creed game. I thought Assassin's Creed 2 was okay. I know most people that's really their favorite. Played 3, played 4, played of like that newer trilogy. What was it? Odyssey, Origins, and Valhalla. I played whatever was first, Odyssey or Origins. I can't remember. It was the Egypt one, and man, there was so much bloat in that game and just so many icons on the screen, and you were just constantly being pulled in different directions and feeling like you were under leveled constantly, and I just could not do it. So I would really like to see them kind of go backwards a little bit. City Skylines 2. So I've always wanted to get into City Skylines. I talked about that not too long ago, as I've been playing a bunch of city builders this year. And at the time, for whatever reason, when City Skylines came out, my computer wouldn't run it. I don't know why. I exceeded all the specifications for it, recommendations, all that. I would certainly get into it now, but there's so much DLC, and I don't necessarily want to just dump a ton of money on a game that has a sequel coming out soon. So I think City Skylines 2 is going to be a really good point to just kind of start fresh, because even though I have been playing all these city builders this year, none of which scratch that SimCity itch quite like City Skylines will, because that is like the closest analog to that. These other ones are very small in nature, like Terrascape, Terranil, that kind of stuff. All right. Moving on after that, what else do we have? Forgive me as I scroll through my list here. The next Forza is apparently coming out at some point this year. They've been hyping it up quite a bit. They showed off some gameplay and some developer interviews and all that kind of stuff not too long ago. I think my time with sim racing games is kind of past. The only thing I would really probably get into anymore would be if I end up with like a PS VR 2 headset, I would play Grand Theft Auto 7 in VR. but my time of spending hundreds of hours like I did with some of the earlier Gran Turismos in a sim racing game, I think those days are kind of long gone. I am very happy to just play my Forza Horizon series, which I greatly enjoy. Played a ton of the last Forza Horizon. That was one of the best games that came out that year. Alrighty. Let's see. It's funny, Lord of the Rings Gollum is on here, but we already talked about it. All right. So I guess we might as well get into my most anticipated game of the year, and that is Spider-Man 2. I'm sorry, Marvel's Spider-Man 2. So this is supposed to be coming out in September, like right around the time Starfield's coming out, which I'm not thrilled about, because if Starfield hits, then I would like to have that time to just dedicate to it. I was hoping that Spider-Man 2 would maybe come out October, November, and have a little bit of time, but the first Spider-Man game that came out a few years ago was 2019, I believe. That has quickly cemented itself on my list of all-time favorite games, not just of like the modern times or like favorite PS4, Xbox One era games. Like, nope, just straight up, I believe it is one of the best games ever. Like, I absolutely love that game. It's one of the few games I've gone back through and played multiple times all the way through, trying to like 100% it, like all that stuff. Like, these are things that I never do with games. But that game was just so solid, so well made. The gameplay was just perfect. You couldn't ask for much better. So this is something that is really, really just constantly in my brain, like feel like we're working towards when it comes out.
I know how excited you are for the new Spider-Man game. We've had a lot of conversations about how you just can't wait to experience the sequel to one of your all-time favorite games. So I'm making it my mission that if I find out anything about this game, through my vast network of Hollywood contacts, I'm going to spoil the shit out of it.
Thanks, man. I wouldn't expect anything else from you. All right, next up, Mortal Kombat 12. I'm not going to talk about that now because there is some stuff in the news section, so we'll talk about that then. They've been putting out some teaser trailers. Payday 3 is supposed to come out this year. I played a ton of Payday 2. Payday 2 was awesome. I'm very sad about Payday 3 because I used to have people to play games with like that, and I don't have that anymore. So I don't have anybody to play Payday 3 with, and I don't want to play with a bunch of randos on the internet. So I don't know. We'll see what happens when that comes out. But I'm going through, we're in the S's and the T's. I think that's probably gonna wrap it up. Yeah, let's call it on that. So yeah, I mean, as of right now, even with a bunch of unannounced stuff lurking in the shadows as we get closer to kind of, reveal season, let's call it that, because E3 season is an outdated term now because E3 doesn't exist. But yeah, reveal season, summer reveal season, because it looks like even though we still have Nintendo Directs and PlayStation, whatever the hells, and Xbox showcases throughout the year, PlayStation State of Plays, although PlayStation whatever the hell's is that's a solid name. Jack Ryan, you get on that. I don't think you work there anymore, but you're somewhere beating somebody up in some locked room with a single light bulb swinging from the ceiling. It seems like the industry is still committed to coming together halfway through the year in June and announcing a bunch of stuff. That doesn't seem to be changing, which I like. I like having that kind of that area where you're going to get a whole bunch of stuff. So I'm sure that list that we just went through is going to change dramatically over the coming month as a bunch of stuff gets announced, and probably the coming months as stuff unfortunately gets delayed. But that's going to wrap up the first half of the show. We'll be back in just a moment with the news. All right, we are back with the news, and we are starting off with an interesting story that concerns Game Freak, the makers of Pokemon. Private Division has signed a new action-adventure IP from Pokemon studio Game Freak coming out of VGC this week. The game, called Project Bloom, is expected to release in 2026. So we have some time to go. And this one is interesting because I think for a lot of people, casual fans, they probably just assume that Game Freak, only makes Pokemon, which for the most part they do, but they have released other games in the past. And secondly, are like owned by Nintendo, like a first party developer. But they are not. They are still their own thing. They put out a piece of concept art, which you can see, which looks a little Ghost of Tsushima like, although much more kind of fantastical. Christian, I know you're a big Pokemon fan. You got any thoughts on Game Freak kind of stepping outside their bounds?
They're allowing the Pokemon people to make a different kind of game? I guess I just kind of always assumed that Miyamoto has a gun pointed at Pikachu's head anytime they want to stray from the formula.
Yeah, I would not be surprised. Obviously this is like kind of too soon to really make any comment. It's a cool kind of thing just because it's like, oh yeah, that's right. They aren't just exclusively Pokemon. They want to step out and try other things. And I would be interesting to see what Game Freak can do, not limited by the technology of the Switch. See what they could do with a big AAA brand new IP. Obviously you can only garner so much information from a screenshot, but my best guess is this is going to be some type of third-person action game. And it's cool that Private Division was, they're snapping it up, which kind of makes sense. They have the ability to work out a publishing deal with kind of a legendary developer. I think that this game is probably going to get maybe a little bit too much hype just because, a lot of the Pokemon fans or, people that, maybe used to play Pokemon are going to say, well, I want to see what the studio can do. What else can they do? What can they show us? And maybe it'll get some undue hype. But, hey, they obviously know how to make a great game. They stumbled on sounds negative, but, they really kind of worked out like the perfect formula for the Pokemon style game, these very beginner friendly RPGs. Obviously they had an amazing IP to work with that has carried that company for decades at this point. But they still had to develop the game and still had to knock out a formula to pull people in, and man, they certainly did that. So it'd be cool to see if they can do it again. All right, next up on our list, mentioned earlier that there was going to be some Starfield news. Starfield's ESRB rating came in. Obviously, it's going to be rated M. That's not really a surprise. It's being rated M for blood, strong language, suggestive themes, use of drugs, and violence. And this story is coming out of VGC as well. So ESRB, not only do they kind of do that little blurb on the back of the box, that explains why they got the M rating, they also provide a little more detail, and this is what it says. According to the ESRB, the game will see players use futuristic guns, lasers, axes, and explosives to kill enemies. Combat is fast-paced with frequent gunfire, cries of pain, and explosions. Attacks on some enemies can result in blood splatter effects. Several environments depict bloodstains on the ground around corpses. It also says that characters can share a bed, if you know what I mean. It says one sex scene features the line spoken by a character, "Life is a sexually transmitted disease that is 100% fatal." So you can tell that they are at Hallmark movie level of writing quality on this. But that does kind of open things up to give you some glimpse into the fact that you're going to be able to have these relationships with people. That was obviously a very well received, though much criticized and talked about feature of the Mass Effect games. Says that the game's drug-themed content revolves around a fictional drug called Aurora. Aurora is prominent in the game with a section involving players' characters working in an illicit drug lab. You can also obtain Aurora by stealing or buying it from vendors. Consuming Aurora results in a distortion effect on the screen, so yeah, you can make yourself a total junkie in the game. So that obviously, kind of gives you some details into the world of Starfield, that you can probably not necessarily maybe set in stone, good guy, bad guy, or to continue on with the Mass Effect talk, Paragon and Renegade. But maybe you can. Maybe there's some shades of gray. Maybe there totally is a morality system in the game. We don't know. This doesn't mention that at all. but it shows you that the world's going to be fleshed out. There's going to be maybe some things that we didn't necessarily know about. We knew that we were going to be able to have our own ship, and it says you're going to be able to hire your own crew. Maybe that crew is where the romance options come from. Maybe you can romance certain significant NPCs, like, kind of get your mind start going. And this is obviously this isn't really news, like they announced this to give you more details. It's just a standard ESRB filing. But, getting people kind of talking about this kind of thing and letting their imaginations run wild can do kind of one of two things. It can go negatively, where people overinflate what could potentially be in this game, and when things aren't what they imagine that they are going to be or what they think they should be, then they turn negative and start complaining on the internet. Or, it works the other way, and it gets people maybe in a little more rational mindset thinking about this game, especially with that Starfield Direct coming up in just a matter of weeks, and really kind of gets the ball rolling as we near an actual release date for this game that's been delayed multiple times at this point. I'm not going to read too much into this as somebody that is super excited about the game. I assume that there would probably be some type of relationship system in the game. The drug thing, I don't know. There's a lot of games that have done that kind of thing. Didn't Elder Scrolls, is that skooma? Is that their thing? Skooma? Yeah, skooma in Skyrim. Skooma is an illegal narcotic that is used throughout Tamriel. So, it's nothing really new, but it just kind of adds weight and depth to, this world, or maybe worlds, putting it mildly, considering you'll be able to travel to different worlds in Starfield. But I'm excited to see how fleshed out they make this. I don't want to pick up this game and enjoy it and feel like, well, the only thing I can really do is just kind of go from main mission to main mission, pick up a side quest here and there. Like, I want a fleshed out world. I want a bunch of things to go and do. If I decide that halfway through this game I want to become a massive drug addict asshole, I want the ability to do that, and then I can turn around the second half and have a redemption arc, so to speak. So yeah, whatever they could do to kind of flesh the game out, that's good with me. I'm excited to have it. All right, next thing up on our list, the ROG Ally. The details reviews have finally come out. It is reviewing super positively, although it is missing some key features that its main competitor, the Steam Deck, has. I believe the biggest one is the being able to quick resume a game. It does not have that. You have to fully quit out of a game anytime you're done playing it. But it seems like it is pretty much equal in quality to the Steam Deck, and probably performs a little bit better. Linus Tech Tips YouTube channel has a very good detailed breakdown comparing and contrasting the Steam Deck and the ROG Ally. Asus has been in the media a lot lately, not just because they are coming out with their Steam Deck competitor that is priced very competitively. I think it's $700, which is only $50 more than the most powerful Steam Deck, and the system ultimately is more powerful than Steam Deck, so pretty good pricing there. But they've been in the news because they've been trying to sweep some stuff under the rug about maybe some choices they have made that are causing people's computers to set on fire. If you're interested in learning more about that, Gamers Nexus on YouTube has a pretty detailed breakdown, as they've been kind of leading the coverage on that. I thought about getting a Steam Deck multiple times. I've thought about getting one as recently as just a few months ago, when they became easier to get. There was not a super long waiting list to get one anymore. But I don't know. I ultimately don't know what exactly I would do with it. Sure, there are some times where I'm laying on the couch and I guess I would like to play a handheld game. But it's not. It doesn't have exclusives, right? So it's not like a Switch in a handheld that would have exclusives. It's all stuff that you already own on your PC, or maybe would purchase specifically to play handheld. So without it having its own library, it's one of those things where it's I guess it'd be nice to lay on the couch and play this game, but I guess I could just go sit in my office and play it on PC on a bigger screen and with the settings cranked up, to the max. But, it all depends on your lifestyle and the way you like to play games. I have certainly had periods in my life where I was super into handheld gaming, specifically when like the Vita came out. I was very much into that. And I played quite a bit of 3DS early on. I had kind of skipped the DS era up until the 3DS came out, so there's a lot of games I just never got around to playing. Maybe one of these days. I was doing a significant amount of DS emulation at one point, and that's how I played through some of the bigger games on the platform. But back in the day when I was a little kid, I didn't have a Game Boy until a little bit later on. I think it was either 98 or 99 when I got a Game Boy. I did have a Sega Game Gear, and I do have a lot of fond memories of playing the Sega Game Gear. But yeah, not too much after that. I think I had a Game Boy. I had a Game Boy Advance as a kid. I know I definitely had one as an adult. So yeah, I've been kind of hit or miss, hot and cold with handhelds. And at this point, spending $700 plus tax on a handheld that I don't know, like, how often am I really going to play this? So we'll kind of see on that one. But it's reviewing really well. Obviously, I don't have one. Pre-orders are open. They're going to sell out. I did see yesterday. I expected the pre-orders to sell out like really fast. Or no, I'm sorry, not yesterday. On Friday. I did see that you could just pre-order one at Best Buy. It wasn't sold out. You were able to click. I don't know. Maybe I just happened to be on their website at the right time for it to say that. Maybe if I had checked 30 seconds later, it would have been sold out. I don't know. But I assume it's going to be a pretty popular release. All right. After that, I guess they're calling this because that's what they're actually going to call it. Mortal Kombat 1 is apparently a bunch of details have leaked about it. So they put out a teaser trailer that we talked about last week, I think it was, where they showed like a clock ticking in the sands of time and things explode because Ed Boon, the guy that heads up Mortal Kombat, kind of said that he viewed 9, 10, and 11 as its own trilogy. That story is now done. They're going to start over. They put out another teaser trailer this week, which again shows the ticking clock. And instead of going from 11 to 12, it skips 12 and goes to 1. And so it seems like a data miner by the name of Bill Kuhn claims that Mortal Kombat 1 will be released for the PS5, Xbox Series X and S, PC, and Nintendo Switch. So no PS4, no Xbox One. $70 on PlayStation and Xbox, $60 on Switch. Premium Edition, $109.99, and a Collector's Edition with a K at $250. I assume that will have some type of statue. I guess if they call it Mortal Kombat 1, that is kind of weird because obviously there was the original Mortal Kombat and then the reboot Mortal Kombat 9 is not called Mortal Kombat 9. It's just called Mortal Kombat. So calling it Mortal Kombat 1 is very weird. I didn't like it when Battlefield did that and they called it Battlefield 1. So hopefully that's not going to be the name. I don't see why they can't just call it Mortal Kombat 12. They called it Mortal Kombat 10, they called it Mortal Kombat 11, but it is what it is. The game story, which is weird to talk about the story of Mortal Kombat because it's like fighting games for such a long time didn't have a story, but now they do. And Mortal Kombat's had a pretty engaging one over the past few games. Liu Kang now has the ability to like manipulate time, so maybe that's how we end up getting some characters that have passed away back in the game. Maybe that is how we get some new characters. Maybe they de-age some characters because, in the newer games we saw an older Johnny Cage, an older Sonya Blade. I've said it before. Personally, let's for the sake of argument say that they're going to do 20 characters in their initial roster because that there's going to be DLC. Mortal Kombat and NetherRealm have become masters of DLC characters, pulling in people from movies and television. You'll be able to play as like the Terminator and the Alien and RoboCop and all that. So let's say they start off with 20 characters. I'd like to see 10 old, 10 new. I think that'd be pretty cool. I'd be all for that. The last time they introduced a bunch of new characters, which I believe that was Mortal Kombat 9. I liked a lot of the new characters they did, like D'Vorah, Ferrator, there's some fun characters to play with in those games. So I would like to see more new characters. I know that hasn't necessarily always worked out for them well in the past. Remember, there's a lot of backlash to Mortal Kombat 4 with the heavy emphasis on new characters, but now a lot of those characters are looked back fondly. A lot of those characters have continued on with the game and appear in modern incarnations of the series. So, you just got to understand that, a lot of people don't like change. They like things to stay the same. They always want it to have, same with Street Fighter, this game better have Ryu, Ken, Guile, blah, 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 etc. Same thing, Mortal Kombat. This game better have Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Raiden, Liu Kang, etc., etc. And you can still do that, but maybe change it up a little bit. If we are going to see some like crazy time mechanic stuff, maybe, I don't know, a super old Scorpion, or like Scorpion in his like demon form or something like that, or I don't know, a young Sub-Zero, or maybe a different member of the Lin Kuei becomes Sub-Zero and we get kind of like a different take on the character. I don't know. Anytime you mix in like time travel and time manipulation, all that stuff, there's a lot that you can do with your story. So I'm very interested to see what happens, and it's going to be a really interesting year for fighting games because Tekken, Mortal Kombat, and Street Fighter are all on the books. I can't believe I missed Tekken in my rest of the year preview. I must have just skipped over when I was looking through it. But yeah, new Tekken coming out this year. Obviously, because Street Fighter is the closest to release, people have actually gotten their hands on it with multiple open betas. That's what everybody's kind of talking about right now, but that's going to die down once the game comes out and it has been out for a month or two. And then, I would expect maybe a fall release for Mortal Kombat if it, they do seem to be fairly set in stone that this game is coming out this year. So I think a fall release would be good. I mean, I think it would be wise of them to maybe slide it in that maybe August or October to stay away from September with the 1-2 punch of Starfield and Spider-Man. But at the same time, as a fighting game, it is a very different audience than Spider-Man and Starfield. So maybe they do put it out in September and it's good counter programming. And maybe people are just like, man, I've been playing Starfield all week. I want something different to play. I want a totally different style of game. Let me fire up some Mortal Kombat. Maybe that ends up working out really well for them. But I'm definitely excited for this game. I'm eagerly anticipating more trailers, more information. Hopefully at the the Keighley Gala, the Keighley Games Fest, maybe we'll get some more details. So last story of the year, this is an interesting one. So initially when Call of Duty, the last one came out, Modern Warfare 2, the current offering, they had said that they were going to take 2023 off and they were just going to keep supporting Modern Warfare 2 for an additional year to give the team a break to kind of press forward with whatever they want to do in 2024. But we found out last year, not long after the game came out, a lot of fans were very upset with Modern Warfare 2 for a number of reasons, some rightfully so and some definitely not. It's something they kind of backtracked on that, and another Call of Duty would indeed be coming out in 2023. There have been some drip-fed leaks and details, but an interesting one is it looks like it's going to be Modern Warfare 3. They are not going to take a year off because in between Modern Warfare 1, they did, Vanguard. Was Cold War also in between? I think Cold War was also in between. So I think it was a couple of years between the two, but it sounds like it's just going to be maybe a year, even less, in between Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 3. According to Insider Gaming, the game will come out November 10th this year, an early access period 8 days earlier, and 2 beta weekends in October 2023, which is pretty much what they have done over the past several years. It says the game will feature full campaign multiplayer zombies mode and a Warzone 2.0 map update. I don't know. Modern Warfare 2, I really enjoyed. I think that it's got really, really weak map selection, and they have not fixed that with these subsequent map releases. I really don't understand why they have gone back to the well on maps that we have gotten recently. Like they put out a map that was just in Vanguard, which in and of itself was an older Call of Duty map being remade for the modern or for the current game at the time. I really don't understand why we aren't getting just a whole bucket of redone original Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 maps. I think that's what fans have really been asking for, and I think that would be pretty cool. They just don't seem to be interested in doing that. Or maybe they had planned, if the game was going to take a year off, or the franchise was going to take a year off, maybe around November, when a game would have come out, maybe they would have done, here is a gigantic map pack of Modern Warfare 2 maps. Maybe that is what would have happened. I don't know. Nobody knows aside from the developers if that was going to happen or not. But, that would have been probably made up for the fact that there wasn't a full-blown new release. They could have tied it into a whole Warzone event and, called it like a refresh and, marketing opportunities, out the door, really. They could have come up with a million things. But instead, they have focused on largely making some changes that people seemingly are not really interested in Warzone. I don't follow Warzone, but I know that a lot of people are really down on Warzone this time around. People were really excited and getting back into it when DMZ came out, and that didn't really necessarily translate into DMZ becoming the next big thing. It also didn't really translate to people that maybe were not hopping into Warzone 2.0 to hoping that they would go into DMZ and then filter back out to Warzone. That also didn't seem to really happen. I know people were super into like the proximity chat, and that was a real hot topic for a couple of weeks, but quickly that kind of cooled off. I am dying for a reason to go back to the multiplayer in Modern Warfare 2, but every time I do, I am just not thrilled with the overall package I am getting when it comes to maps. Like I said, I really think that those launch maps are really weak. I think it's one of the weakest collections of maps in a Call of Duty game that I have ever played. There's only a handful of maps that I think are really good and fun to play on, and they're almost the ones you never get in your rotation. So I find myself just playing whatever playlist they have that is like, here's the one new map we have 24/7, or here's shipment 24/7 and leveling up. And you can only do that for so long before it's just like, well, I just don't feel like playing this game right now. Which is a shame because I really like the way the game plays. I think gameplay wise, it's one of the tightest Call of Duties ever. It is a blast to play, but you can only enjoy that gameplay so much if the maps are constantly fighting against you. So I don't know, if Modern Warfare 3 comes out this year, sure, I'm a big enough Call of Duty fan that I'll probably hop on board and play it. But man, they really got to come up with a really solid selections of maps, because what they've been doing lately is just not cutting it. So that's going to, I think that's going to wrap the show up for this week. Not too much else going on. Now that my office is kind of slowly coming together, I should be able to get back to work on ancillary content. I want to do another episode of Full Motion Sickness. That series has kind of quietly been on hiatus as I have been redoing everything. So now that things are kind of coming back together, I should be able to do another episode in the coming weeks. I'm not sure what I'm gonna watch yet, but we'll talk about it as it gets closer. Next week, I'm not really sure how next week's gonna go. I'll have tape to talk about, and obviously the news, but maybe something happens and I finish Jedi Survivor and we can talk about that. I'm not really sure. We're in a little bit of a lull over the next few weeks as we await Street Fighter and Diablo. Maybe if it reviews well, grab Lego 2K Drive. But yeah, next week might be another kind of quiet week. Maybe I'll start digging around and seeing if I can find some more under the radar games like I did with Terra Nil and Terrascape, and see if I can dive into something like that. But other than that, I guess that'll do it. Christian, do you have anything you wanted to say before we head out for the week?
I would say I'm proud of you for getting your new office up and running, but let's be honest, you had somebody else pretty much do all the work, you lazy sack of shit.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Thanks for hanging out, everybody, and see you again next week.